I went to school in Mount Anville in Dublin, and then from there I went to UCD to study economics and politics. If I go back to when I was in school, I didn't have a very strong career orientation. I mean, some of the girls in my class always knew they wanted to be doctors or lawyers or teachers. I never was really very clear. So I took a broad range of subjects in my Leaving Cert. I did a little bit of science, I did languages, I did history, in order to keep my options open. And I decided to do economics and politics in university, again with the idea of keeping my options open. Even at that stage I was interested in an international career, but I was in university at the time when Ireland joined the European Union. So it was very exciting, it was the new horizon of its time. I never intended to stay as long in the organisation as I have done, but I stayed because it was so interesting. So I have worked in different departments. I worked in the industry department on competition, I worked on external relations, I worked on environment policy, and I also worked in the cabinets of 3 commissioners. So all of that was a preparation then for taking the top job as Secretary General. And one of the reasons why President Barroso invited me to be Secretary General was because I had a very broad range of experience across the organisation, so I know it very well. Being the Secretary General means I'm the head of the civil service of the European Commission, so it's a very varied job. I work very closely with the President of the Commission. Every week at the weekly meetings of the Commission, I sit beside the President to help him. I organise a lot of the policy work inside the Commission, and I am also the person who represents the Commission at meetings of the European Council. So when all the Prime Ministers meet, I go with the President, and also to meetings of the European Parliament, for example. So it's a very busy and varied job. Part of it is administrative, and part of it is about policy work, bringing different ideas together so the Commission makes the most well-rounded proposals that we can, in the hope of finding consensus across the 28 countries of the European Union. It's very important to have priorities, to understand what are the political priorities of the Commission, and then to try to deliver them at the same time as keeping the machine running reasonably smoothly. I think I have professional patience. I'm not naturally a patient person, but I can sit through hours of meetings in order to try to steer them to the conclusion that I want, or to try to find a consensus. I think you have to be both clear but also diplomatic. I think the most rewarding experience in my career was working on enlargement. I worked in the 90s with countries like Poland and Hungary when they were preparing to join, and it was politically, emotionally, historically really the most exciting thing I've done. There was the feeling of righting the wrongs of history and of putting the continent back together again. There's lots of ways to come work in one of the European institutions. It can be very short term. So for graduate staff, we offer 5-month internships, and that's a very good way to see if you might like it. It gives a very quick exposure to working in a very cosmopolitan, very international environment. We recruit people on fixed-term contracts, and then we also have still recruitment through the open competition to the permanent civil service. We have quite a lot of opportunities for non-graduates as well, going from the sort of classical secretarial type skills to IT functions, to support functions. If people want to come on an internship, then they don't need any previous experience. You have to have a degree, but then you can apply. We recruit people from every academic background. Traditionally, we have a lot of people with economics and legal backgrounds, but more and more we have people with technical backgrounds working in, say, health or science or environment. We have classic scholars, we have the whole range. To work in any of the European institutions, you need to be able to show you speak reasonably well a language other than your mother tongue. And that is very important, because it's important to understand the different cultures, the diversity that makes up the European Union. I did French, German and Italian in school, and I presented French as my second language. Of course, now English is very much the international language, but we don't only work in English. We have 24 official languages, and in the Commission we work in 3 languages, English, French and German. And I think it's important for the institutions that we have a good geographic balance. So we need to have younger Irish people coming into the system playing their role. I personally think it's important also for younger Irish people not only to look to the English-speaking world, not always to think about going to Australia, the United States or Canada. Part of the wonderful thing about being in the European Union is the opportunities that it gives. And I would like to see more young Irish people giving it a go, just experiencing what it's like working with so many different nationalities. And in the end of the day, I think either on a private basis or certainly career-wise, to have had a bit of experience of working with the European Union is professionally very useful, because it's difficult to think of any career that isn't going to have some need to understand how the EU functions. I think there are lots of reasons why Irish people do well and enjoy working in the institutions. First of all, I think we are lucky enough to have a very good educational system, and Irish people have a broad educational background. So that's an immediate head start. We are English speaking, but without coming from a big member state. So we're not seen to have a big political agenda that we're promoting. I think Irish people are fairly easygoing, very sociable, make an effort to get on and reach out to people. And I think we are quite hardworking. So if you put all that together, it makes recruiting Irish people a pretty attractive proposition.